In a recent video, I took you on a tour of our gardens where we looked at dozens of different upright columnar conifers. And during that video, we mentioned several different deciduous upright columnar plants. Today's video, then, we're going to take a closer look at many of those that I mentioned, as well as quite a few more, how they can be used in your garden and in your landscape. And if you're not familiar with the term, a deciduous plant is one that drops its leaves during the dormant period, compared to an evergreen that keeps its needles all through the dormant period. And our first plant up right here is mountain sentinel aspen. Isn't that something? Really stretching out now. One of the more spiral or tight upright aspens. I love using these vertical statements in the landscape. They also make a nice border or almost a living fence. But my favorite way to use the columnar plants is definitely just to stand alone in the landscape. All the different aspen varieties, whether they be the wider, broad ones or the columnar, tend to have basically the same leaf shape. They've also got something called a flat petiole, so it doesn't easily roll between your fingers. And that flat shape of the petiole stem is what helps makes the leaves quake or shimmer in the wind. So you might also hear the aspen referred to as shimmering aspen, as well as quaking aspen. Here's a close-up of the bark on our tree. This smooth greenish white is quite common. And as our Mount Sentinel matures, it'll get wider than this to about an 8-foot width, and it's eventually going to reach 35 to 40 feet tall. And characteristic to all the aspens is this nice yellow fall color that you see here. Before we move on, let's quick mention this wonderful tall yellow flowering perennial here. This is Autumn Sun Rudbeckia. I highlighted this in a previous video where we took a look at several tall perennial varieties that get over 4 feet tall. I'll put a link in the description box below if you'd like to take a closer look at some of those perennial varieties. Okay, our next columnar plant up is going to be one that's in the birch group. It's called the Parkland pillar birch. And this one that I've put in over in this area is just doing fantastic over here. Birch tend to like their moisture, but they don't want wet feet. They don't want a continually saturated condition. But look at how nicely that one's doing in there. Yeah, and this one, occasionally we get some heavy rains. This waterway or ditch here does fill up with water, but it drains off quickly enough, and that's on a little bit of a higher point. One of the main reasons that we grow birch, they do get oftentimes that white bark. Depending on the variety, though, you can also see a cinnamon color and sometimes even an exfoliating color. I'm leaving the branches on this birch low to the ground so we don't get to enjoy that white bark quite as much, but you can see in there, if we were to lift these branches up someday, yeah, that would even add, I think, more to the ornamental effect of this. Here's a look at our birch from the other side. In the fall, the birch tend to get this nice yellow fall color. And it's zone 3 with a mature size around 30 feet tall by 8 feet wide. A medium grower. It's not as fast as that first aspen we'll look at, but that's going to make it a little bit stronger tree. Those fast growing trees, well, it's a weaker wood and they don't last or live as long. Dakota Pinnacle, it's another upright birch, but it gets a bit wider at the bottom, as you can see here. I used to have 3 Dakota Pinnacles in our landscape, but about 5 years ago we had a severe winter in our area that caused extensive dieback on many different birch varieties. I ended up taking these out that spring due to the injury and replaced them with several other tree varieties. Okay, let's go ahead and swing around here and we'll take a look at one more columnar aspen variety, as well as another Parkland pillar birch I've got growing in our gardens. Those clump shrubs straight ahead are flame amur maples. A good name because look at the flame red fall color these get. It's just spectacular. Okay, back to our next columnar plant. And this one has been in here, I can't even hardly believe it, I think over 10 years. And the deer have come in and they beat it back quite a bit those first years, but now it's finally starting to look like, well, it's a normal tree again, not all misfigured. And I think it's gonna take off from this point. So even though they're fast growers, doesn't always work out that way, but there it is. That's Swedish aspen. Now you're probably not going to believe me, but this Swedish aspen that you see here was planted at the same time as that little guy. It's just amazing how quickly this one took off. And maybe it was a little too fast for its own good. That fast growth, it's weaker wood, and unfortunately this was taken down in a thunderstorm with strong winds. So the little guy prevailed after all, and maybe one day he'll be that large. Swedish aspen are hardy to zone 2 and get about the same height as Mount Sentinel, but wider. That's going to do okay, and then we'll have to keep some of those branches there pruned back from that red splendor flowering crab, but I think it's going to fit in there quite nice. Okay, let's go ahead. We're going to head back in this area. Cut through this opening, a hoops blue spruce on the right, a buckeye there, the prairie torch on the left. Here we go. Yeah, there's another Parkland pillar birch. Isn't that something there? Now the history on this one, believe it or not, this thing died back to the ground back in 2021. We had an event across our state in the northern Great Plains here, the North Dakota area, where 50% of the birch had damage. And this thing died back to the ground. Let's see if you can see the old stump. No, not really. But I thought it was a goner, so I took it out. Well, the next year, 2022, look at that. Yeah, it was about 2 to 3 feet tall. And now, 2025, just a few years later, wow, look at that. I bet that thing's over 20 feet tall now. So again, just doing great in there. We'll quick mention a couple of those bright colored plants. That's Jackpot Weigela. Gets a nice pink bloom. You can see one of them is still left right there, but that's an earlier bloomer. And then Summer Dawn, Potentilla. I think my favorite Potentilla. Seems like it never has any dieback. Always doing great in that area. All right, next one up is on the other side of this bed. Beyond that large ground cover you see there, the icy blue juniper. I've got some work to do on this one since it's now growing over the edging and into the lawn. Keep an eye out for that video where I'm going to get that pruned back and how I plan on killing the grass that has started to grow in there. Here again, we're getting back into, well, I call it deer country in the winter. And initially they were browsing on this as well. And they really, they beat it up in the middle, but boy, it's coming back beautifully now. A very characteristic leaf on the mountain ash. I have not seen the showy flowers that you get in the spring with this variety, nor have I seen any of the fruit yet, which is another really, really great characteristic of this tree to grow. But that's going to do beautifully in there, just a perfect location. So the upright columnar European mountain ash. All right, next one up. You probably aren't going to see this one too often in nurseries. When I saw it, I thought, yeah, this is an interesting plant. It's Sutherland caragana. The caraganas are also referred to as the Siberian pea shrubs. Nice upright habit there, and since we've been on the subject of deer doing damage, yeah, that's why you see all these bare branches down here. They browse on this, and they've kept it, well, pretty much without leaves or lateral growth, but I actually kind of like the look of it. Luckily, they haven't damaged the trunk. The pea shrubs, they do get a nice yellow flower in the spring and a golden yellow fall color. And if you look up there on the top too, we're also in some of the new growth, we're kind of seeing a golden yellow tip. Yeah, so this is one of the better plants to grow if you've got, well, high pH, alkali type soils. Tough plant into that zone 2 category. All right, let's swing through here. Next up, we're going to take a look at one of the flowering crab apples, Emerald Spire flowering crab. You can see it right there. Maybe you see the red fruit. A little bit bigger fruit on this than some of the other flowering crab apples. When you come up with that, it almost looks like a plum. You think it's going to be soft and juicy, but boy, yeah, they're hard. They're hard. But a nice pink flower in the spring, maintaining that beautiful columnar habit. Since we've got so many other things growing in there, I'm just, that's going to fit in there nicely. Long term, I don't think I'm ever going to have a problem with that. But there's a lot of other varieties of the flowering crabs. Here's a video clip of a video we did a while back. My wife and I visited the International Peace Garden, and I really liked how they used these flowering crabs bordering each side of the sidewalk with that nice purple tone color. Gladiator, that's another dark purple variety. I want to quick mention, well, this isn't a columnar plant. It's a ginkgo, but there are columnar ginkgos, and they're used, I think, extensively in some different cities because, well, they're quite tolerant to pollution, apparently. So not a columnar here. This is autumn gold ginkgo. It's a yellow fall color, growing very, very slow here. But the ginkgos, yeah, you could look into that in your region if you like the look of that leaf. Okay, you can see off in the distance there, yeah, that one kind of sticking up the tallest. That's our next one that we're going to look at. That's going to be, that's Prairie Sentinel Hackberry. Again, one of the reasons I really like some of the columnar plants is, you know, I've got 2 acres here, but I'm pretty much out of space already, so it was nice to be able to get a few more varieties kind of squeezed in there with that upright vertical growth habit. Hackberries get what's called a lemon yellow fall color, but they also get something on their leaves called nipple gall. Right there, take a look at this. And that's a plant reaction to a little psyllid or a mite. They pierce the plant, and that's the plant's, I guess, defense mechanism, maybe to put it. It's a difficult to control because you have to control those little psyllids and mites, and who knows when they're going to be present. Probably almost all the time. So most of the time it's just left alone and considered well, just a natural characteristics of the hackberry. Then eventually I'll likely have to start pruning up some of those lower branches and keep them above the foliage of the Technedo and Wichita blue conifers that you see on the left and the right. All right, let's swing around here. We're going to talk now about one of the columnar oaks, and we can't grow a lot of the different oaks in our region. We have a neutral to high pH. A lot of the oaks like acidic soil. This is Regal Prince Oak. It's a hybrid of English and swamp white oak, and it can reach about 45 feet tall with a spread of nearly 20 feet. So here again, I'll likely be lifting up some of those lower branches in the future. I hadn't noticed it until I did this video, but it looks like I might have a little bit of iron chlorosis here with that dark green vein that you see here and a little lighter green leaf than normal. This looks like a pretty mild case, so I'm not too worried about it. Due to that higher pH in our area, even if the iron is in the soil, it gets locked up and becomes unavailable to the plant. On the chlorosis subject, and in severe cases, leaves turn completely yellow with that dark vein. Here's an example of that severe case on a silver maple. So yeah, iron chlorosis, it's not specific to oaks, and it can happen on a lot of different plant varieties. But this is really done nicely here. Easily been in there over 10 years. It's one of the last oaks to leaf out in our landscape, and I think that's one of the reasons it's doing well there. It's a zone 4 plant, but we can oftentimes get some really late hard frost even into the latter parts of May, and so some trees that are sensitive to that, yeah, that can wreak havoc on them and cause dieback, even complete death of trees. There's a lot of other columnar oak varieties to pick from depending on where you live. Here's a photo of a crimson spire oak I came across that gets an excellent red fall color, as you can see here on the J. Frank Schmidt website, compared to the yellow that we see on the Regal Prince Oak. And before we wrap this all up, I want to quick mention one more smaller columnar plant, the fine line buckthorn. I had one planted a few years ago, but it winter killed and I haven't replaced it yet. But it is considered hardy to zone 2. It's an interesting little tree reaching about 5 to 7 feet with this fern-like foliage. This one's considered non-invasive compared to some of the older varieties that were sold, like tall hedge buckthorn. All right, then that's all I've got to share with you for now on deciduous upright columnar plants. I appreciate you stopping by. We'll see you again next video.